Hello, welcome to my channel, Mr. Paddington here. Today we are going to look at some questions that you had about the Analogue Pocket. I'm really enjoying my time with the Pocket, playing all the games and playing with the new cores that have been released. But before we do that, I've been building community on Mastodon. If you want to find me there, I'm on Mr. Paddington at mastodon.social. That's where I got most, if not all, the questions for this Q&A about the Analogue Pocket. Before we look at the questions, what have I been doing with the Analogue Pocket? Yes, so I've been trying some of my older GBA, Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Color, some Game Boy games, trying the different filters on the Game Boy games, but mainly also downloading the cores, trying them on, tinkering with the emulation, and being pleasantly surprised. It's actually pretty amazing what the community is doing in terms of emulation and how quickly they're iterating over the different cores that are available. The main ones are Game Boy, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, Game Gear, Neo Geo, Super Nintendo, and Genesis. I might do another video about that, but there's plenty of other YouTubers that have done videos about the emulation and how is that working on the Analogue Pocket. So the first question is, can you share the screen with the TV or take screenshots or videos? I think those are several questions, but I'll tackle all of them at once. First, out of the box with just the Analogue Pocket, you cannot connect it to any TV or a monitor or anything like that. But Analogue is selling an analog dock that has HDMI output, so that allows you to then connect it to a TV or to a monitor, and it's also compatible with some of their wireless controllers, so you can play via Bluetooth controllers on screen as well. Now, in terms of save states, so you cannot capture videos, but I imagine that if you can output from the dock to HDMI, you can plug in a card and do your own video capture. What's built in, I still in beta, I think we are at the Analogue Pocket OS 1.1 beta 8, I think. You can do screenshots. So while you are playing a game, you can then save a screenshot and it will save to your SD card. Next question, can you play two players? The short answer is yes. If you look at the bottom of the Analogue Pocket, you will see that it has the Game Boy Link port, which means if you have an Analogue Pocket, and I'm assuming you Game Boy or Analogue Pocket to Analogue Pocket, you can get the cable, which is the same cable that you use for the printer, and you can do two players. Now, not a lot of, I don't think that the two-player mode is what bring people to do this. Pokemon is the game that made this popular because you can trade Pokemon through the Game Boy Link, and maybe you want to experiment and you bring a Pokemon from Pokemon Red all the way to some of the current consoles. Next question, is there an option to do save state or to do fast forward like in some emulators? I'll start with a fast forwarding bit, or like making the gameplay go faster. I don't know that's popular in some emulators on some of the new releases of some games. Unfortunately, that's not built in yet. That doesn't mean that it's not coming up ever. But right now, out of the box, and even some of the cores that have been released, that's not a feature. Now, you can save state. So that's a built-in feature on the Analogue Pocket OS. The same way the other way around. If you load your card or load your ROM, you can bring the overlay and load a save state. And yeah, that's a very, very useful function for some games that will not make it easy for players to save their games. Next question. What was that error that happened on the previous video? And then it happened again. So yeah, so if you've seen my previous unboxing video, I was trying to play Tetris and it didn't load. Apparently the Analogue Pocket hardware is very sensitive, very sensitive to dirt. So all I have to do was to grab the card, use a Q-tip. I didn't use any contact cleaner or anything. I just use it dry to clean it. I put it back, and it did work. And actually it will remind me to show you that there's some really cool different filters you can use for really old games to emulate that, not that black and white, but that like different shades of green that the original Game Boy had. Now, did it happen again? It did happen again. So I was trying to do some video from another card, the Game & Watch Gallery 3, I think. I plug it in and it didn't work. So how did I fix it? Again, I just cleaned the contacts, plug it back in, and then it started working. It's a related question about how many of my games, how many games in my collection have failed. I only tried around 10 games from my collection on the actual hardware, so not using ROMs, and yeah, 2 of them failed. I don't think that's a good measure to say 20% of the games will fail, but they were pretty dirty in terms of those contacts. So once I cleaned the contact with a Q-tip, they were good to go. This question is, do I have any other analog products? Short answer is no. They're all pretty expensive. Like if you check their webpage, they have Mega Drive, Super Nintendo, like boxes similar to the Analogue Pocket, and they're planning to launch a SuperGraph 16, Turbo Engine 16 one as well. I only have the Analogue Pocket. I might get the adapters, so out of the box the Analogue Pocket can play the Game Boy series, and what I might do is get the adapters to play Neo Geo games, Game Gear, Lynx, and TurboGrafx games on the go. That's a bit pricey, and the shipping, and I live in Canada, so even the customs are expensive. So I'll keep playing with my Game Boy games. Maybe in the future I'll get some of those. So next question is about the hardware and how some of the old games had a little bit of image clipping. Some of the shadows used to be blurry, or yeah, it would not be like 100% perfect. And whether that's, can you reproduce that on the current hardware, or there's like some emulation that's fixing that. So I couldn't find a lot of information about this, and I'll have to dig some of the very, very old games that have it. I think Link's Awakening is one of them, to actually test it. There's a configuration setting called frame blending on the Analogue Pocket OS itself. But to be honest, I couldn't find actually anything. I couldn't find any references on Analogue's help page or user guide or anything that actually explain what is that trying to do. So I'm sorry, I don't have a specific answer for that question, but if I bump into it by trying my other games and find some specific answers, I will make another video. And the last question is, do I think it's worth the price? So it's still selling for over $200 US, plus shipping, plus customs depending on where you live. So it is an expensive piece of hardware. It all depends on what you want to do with it, right? If you think of some of the fancier, more expensive Linux handhelds that are on the market that are way more expensive than this, I don't know if the quality will be there. They can do more emulation, but this is more targeted to those portable consoles. Also, on the flip side, this has a very cool community working on those scores. And I think the emulation on the Analogue Pocket will keep improving over time. The other option is if you have a collection of old portable games, it might be a good idea to get it, because to be honest, like the screens on some of those old portable consoles was not great. Like if you think about it, there were accessories to put on top of the Game Boy, so that the Game Boy Advance, so you get more light and things like that. So the fact that you can just plug in one of the really old like games from like 20-25 years ago into an Analogue Pocket, and then it will run like perfectly super crisp on this super nice screen. I think that is pretty invaluable for me. Also, the added value is like something like Neo Geo Pocket color games with the adapter, you can play those on the Analogue Pocket. Again, the Neo Geo Pocket screen, it doesn't hold up in this day and age, but playing it on handheld hardware like the Analogue Pocket, I think there's a lot of value and it's super fun. It's super fun to go back to some of these old games. So that's it. That's my Q&A on the Analogue Pocket. Do you have any other questions about the Analogue Pocket? Please let me know in the comments. I can do another video. I might do something else about emulation. The emulation scene is pretty strong on the Analogue Pocket. They're releasing new cores. A core is like a system. Imagine like a new system for the Analogue Pocket. For example, they'll release a Super Nintendo core that can run Super Nintendo ROMs. So I might do a video about that because it's super exciting to see how people are porting some of those games, and it enables things like running translation patches for some games that haven't been released here in the West. So that's all we had for today. Now subscribe to the channel, like this video, and like I always say, keep on collecting.